Welcome to Was It Good, the podcast that reviews movies and TV shows. Today we're talking Bad Batch, the series finale. I'm Ravi, joined by
Krishna.
Arjuna.
Nobody's going to do the We Are Was It Good, right? That's great.
And we are Was It Good?
Arjuna, we had him tricked. Ravi practically did it for us.
Well, I mean, there's just an awkward pause, so I had to jump in.
You're the host. You're the host.
I know. I get that I'm hosting this week, but, awkward pauses aside, Arjuna's internet is doing something. I'm not entirely
It's
sure
fine. It's totally fine.
Everything's
all right. Let's get into. So obviously, this is Star Wars Bad Batch. I probably should have said that at the beginning, but if you're clicking this or listening to this pod or watching this pod on our YouTube channel, you probably already know that Bad Batch is a Star Wars property. It's been going on for 3 seasons. It was created by Dave Filoni. It follows a elite group of clones and their lives after the infamous Order 66 is given, and what they kind of go through, and how they pick up a sister who's also a clone, and her story as well. And it's done. And I cried a bunch.
You
Christian,
cried?
did you cry? Juna, did you cry? I did not cry. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, I didn't cry, but I felt things. My heart.
I had
cried,
some questions.
but my heart cried, but my face remained like a stone.
I had
Nice.
some questions following the finale.
What, you had questions? Like
Questions like the
in terms
meaning of life, and
Just some creative storytelling questions that I didn't quite understand.
Sure. Because obviously I have a flow to this. I'm sure. How about we do this? So, Arjun, your questions, let's hold them till the end. I'm going to be like a real teacher here. Please hold questions till the end. But I'd be curious to see if what we bring up in our flow here, if they are going to help answer your questions or if they're complete misses. So,
Sure.
Before we get into like our great one-word impressions to review the full season, I have a big question for the two of you. And for our listeners out there, obviously this is going to be heavy spoilers. We are going to be spoiling, the Bad Batch series, and probably some aspects of the Clone Wars series as well. So this is your warning. If you haven't listened to or watched those great episodes, please go do that. So the big one is Omega. At the very end of the show, it's revealed, a couple of years, 10 years, 15 years, we're not entirely sure how much time specifically has passed, and Omega is leaving the remaining group of the Bad Batch to go and fight with the rebellion, specifically as a pilot. While that is a beautiful and emotionally great scene, we also realize Hunter, Crosshairs, and Wrecker are all kind of like settled down and living their lives, and they're at peace. Omega is going to continue the fight. Now, while that, again, very nice, very heartfelt, there is this thing that occurred to me. In The Mandalorian, we realized that Papa Hux, I'm going to call him Papa Hux, is kind of leading this project called Project Necromancer, which is also the project that Hemlock was running, which was very key. One of the key components was obviously Omega and her blood. Now, at the end of Bad Batch, we see all the data and the information, and the entire facility just kind of go up in flames. And supposedly all the research is gone. But Hemlock does say that as long as Omega is around and that he has Omega, he can restart the project. So the thing that kind of occurred to me is that while she's flying off into the sun and everything seems, dandy and whatever, Hux gets something to restart the whole Project Necromancer, which makes me think, does Omega get captured again by the Empire at some point, and this whole process starts over, and that's kind of depressing? What are your thoughts?
I think it's interesting because we kind of know the end goal of Necromancer, right? Like we saw in episode 9 when Palpatine mysteriously returns. So we know
Palpatine returned.
We know it. It succeeds. We know Grogu is somehow a part of this project too, as we see in the Mandalorian with them searching for him because of his midichlorian count. Like, we can now see through the Bad Batch they were also looking for like kids with high midichlorian counts. Omega was kind of the key because she was the clone. So it's kind of bad news for all of these characters. Like, in terms of something bad happens or they do succeed in the end, it's kind of like watching the Clone Wars and knowing like, hey, all the Jedi are doomed. Like they're all going to die. All these clones are going to die. It's kind of like you've written yourself into this corner and now you're going back and trying to kind of catch up with it. I don't think it necessarily means that she dies, but it does mean that the Empire somehow, some way finds a way to make it all work. And I think clearly they have bigger plans for Omega, right? They wouldn't include that scene where she's kind of going off if there weren't plans to continue this character. And it does feel like there's a lot more they can do in terms of other characters and other people and other events for her to kind of interact with.
Just to piggyback off of Arjuna's point, they can literally do Omega can appear with the exception of any prequel stuff in any future Star Wars project. She's got a Force connection, she's got a Rebellion connection, she's got Commandos connection. Like she can appear almost. She's got an underground criminal world connection. She can. They've set her up. Dave Filoni has set her up to be the literal future DNA. And that works on every level of Star Wars. That's not. I took that from an article. I didn't make that up. Yeah. To your point, Ravi, of the future Project Necromancer, I think my thought immediately after the main episode finale, but before the flash forward, my thought was, okay, so she escaped. Grogu will become the reason that Palpatine returns or whatever. But the fact that she's going to put herself back into the fight, they can go in any direction. Could be anything. I'm curious to see what the Omega Luke, the inevitable Omega Luke connection is. She's going to go fight as a pilot in the Rebellion. I mean, the only question I think is what part of the Rebellion is this pre New Hope? Is this pre Empire? Is this pre Return of the Jedi? Like where in that?
I don't know
in the war is
why.
it?
Yeah, I don't know why, but my gut was this is after A New Hope.
Interesting.
And I think it's because of what I guess the way I look at it is because it's specific to like the Rebellion is looking for more pilots. And if I had to make like a logical assumption, if you take a big piece of your fleet and you throw it at the Death Star, you're most likely losing a big piece of your fleet. And therefore, you're going to need more pilots to kind of.
And we did get the Project Stardust name dropped in this episode, which kind of lends more credence to perhaps it's after that, just the narrative connection there potentially.
And it's also like it's one of those things where we see all the time in Star Wars where these events and things they're leading up to the Battle of Yavin, like we're leading up to this, and it's like we never really see like. Whenever there's a rebellion, especially in like the real world, you get more people involved in a rebellion or in a cause usually after like a big event. And the Death Star blowing up and everyone being like, whoa, the Empire is actually fragile. That's definitely when you would get an influx of people being like, I want to join, or we've been working and let's join the bigger rebellion. So I think it would be interesting and kind of cool to like see if they continue an Omega story and maybe she's part of something else, maybe it's something that takes place in between 4 and 5 or 5 and 6 or whatever. I think that would be more interesting than, we're between 3 and 4 again, or we're between 6 and 7. Like that stuff feels like we've got stories, we know things. Like be done with that. Especially between 3 and 4. I think we need to be done.
What characters do you think Omega will be attached to potentially in like a follow-up? I have a guess.
Oh, is it the Skeleton Crew?
Skeleton Crew is going to be. Isn't Skeleton Crew post Episode 6?
Yeah, it's in the Mandoverse timeline.
She could still pop up there as well,
for sure.
But
she was going to pop up in Boba Fett.
She could pop up in everything.
But if they do like a true animated follow-up, right, following where this kind of tease at the end leaves off. It feels like she's
Rogue
going to
Squadron?
connect with some of. Well, it feels like she's going to connect with some of the Rebels crew. Like, you know, we saw her connect with Hera earlier in the Bad Batch. She's a pilot. Hera's a pilot. Like, maybe there's some type of like Rogue Squadron rebellion fighter type of show that they're doing with a few different characters from some of the different Filoni properties that are kind of coming together. To Ravi's point, maybe it's between like episodes 4 and 5, and it's about like rebellion fighters.
But wasn't
It could
Hera's
be
in the original
Squadron
trilogy.
also Phoenix Squadron during
Yeah.
the Rebels? So I mean, to Arjuna's point, yeah, maybe it is a whole. What's Phoenix Squadron doing during episode 4, 5, and 6?
One little, and just to go off of that, one little aspect of the original trilogy that we haven't really seen is like how they discovered or established the base on Hoth. Like we've seen that in novels, and we even have like an aftermath in that video game. I forget, Shadows of the Empire, which is no longer canon. But so if it is right in that time period between 4 and 5, and perhaps Phoenix Squadron and or this group, you know, it'd be kind of fun to see Omega flying a snow speeder, you know, trying to look for good spots on Hoth. You know, I totally see that be kind of fun.
Let's
With
get
Luke-
into, obviously, before we get into like more nitty gritty and as Arjuna put it, creative story questions. Let's get into one word impressions. How would you guys sum up I want to hear the entire series. Like, how do you sum up 3 seasons of this show in one word?
I'll
And
go
I know you
first.
all did your homework. Yeah, Chris, you go first.
Me?
Yeah, because I didn't do my homework. I don't know what it is. So yeah, you go first.
Yeah, I think for me, I think mine's going to be, and I'll use this term loosely. Well, not loosely. I'm going to say cohesive, because to me, the show as a whole was Dave Filoni's most cohesive piece of storytelling. If you look at Rebels and the Clone Wars, those were big, and I'm going to put emphasis on this word, sprawling epics, and many characters branching off in side stories and side arcs. Sisters, sister arc, infamous sister arc. You know, as an example. This from episode 1 to the last episode that we got, episode 15 of season 3, it felt like a much more contained story. Dave put the brakes on too much expansion. He really did keep it to the Bad Batch, and as a result of that, the finale for me was a very satisfying payoff, because all of the threads, all the narrative threads that we had, like that was a great payoff with Hunter finally trusting Omega to make the call, Crosshair coming all the way back, the influence of tech, Omega, even Omega herself, her being an amalgamation of all the Bad Batch. We saw, I thought Echo was like the MVP of this last episode. Like out of nowhere, Echo comes in and is like, without Echo, you know, I thought like such a strong. If you're talking about like just game statistics, by far and away the MVP of this series episode. So and it was like, you know, all of Omega's training paying off. You know, her leading a young batch of kids like she was at the beginning of the series, and so you know, I just thought narratively. It was probably his most contained and cohesive. There we go. Story, and I thought it was the strongest because of that.
Very nice. Junior, do you have your one word impression ready to go? Because I still don't.
Yeah, you know, I'm gonna go with Wreck.
Oh no,
Wreck's
Star Wars continuity.
No, it's actually to refer to one of the Bad Batch, Wrecker, and I think it highlights. I liked the series, and I liked the finale, and I like the final season, but I don't think it was perfect. And while I appreciate Christian's like word of cohesive, the thing that I thought we didn't get enough of was some of the like learning more about some of the Bad Batch. I thought Wrecker was like a cool character on paper and when we first met him, but from his very first appearance, to the end, how much did we really learn and like dive into?
He's a hammer
Not
and
much.
everything's a nail. And everything's a nail. That's all we learned.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, exactly. Like there was really nothing there. Even the final episode, like it looked like he was gonna die, and he was just kind of like, haggering along, and then that was it. Like he survived and he made it work, and then after Tantus, like he didn't have a line for the last 15 minutes of the episode. Like he wasn't even there for the final bit with like the sign off between Omega and Hunter. Even the like speech before in Pabu when they're like back from there, like again, no lines for Wrecker. And it just was, I thought some of the character development was weird because it was nice that it was contained and just about this unit. But I think they did better jobs with some characters like Crosshair than they did with like Wrecker. And then they did they did more with Tech only to kill him, which is fine.
Yep.
That was an emotional payoff. But even Hunter, like I thought they like stagnated on Hunter's development after a little bit. Like he kind of became a little bit one note, and they didn't dive into the personalities of these guys a little bit, and it just feels like a missed opportunity there. When you had kind of the focus on these characters, like there's just too many. Like, what was the point of Sid at the end of the day when they like worked for Sid? Like, what was like? There was too much of that. There was too much of like, let's go on the little side mission for Sid. Or the episode I really hated in season 2, the treasure hunt one, where like I
with the pirate,
absolutely hated that episode.
That
was
episode was a fan episode to call out like references to
the big mech thing, right?
Jedi Fallen Order, the Zappo, whatever the alien race was.
And
I mean,
so like
even too, there's like a lot of this. Like I understand the hate and the development thing, but like a lot of it is it's fan service, like
for sure.
And I think actually that ties up my word, which is just service.
Oh my!
Like again, like well, in the sense that like it's a lot of this stuff is being done to service the fans, right? Like you're continuing creating the story because like fans like the clones and these characters and everything and like Ventress, and that's like my other talking point is the idea of Ventress and like putting her in like to our June's point, like Sid, what's the point? Like what was the point of Ventress?
Right.
Like
just to show that she's alive.
I get it was to show like Omega maybe talk a little bit and teach them about Force stuff, but like didn't have to be Ventress.
Correct.
Ravi, we all know why they put Ventress in there with the new haircut, new lightsabers, and a new ship.
Toys.
It's to sell toys that you will buy in approximately 3 to 6 months.
How do you know? Oh, I mean, you're right. That is like how long these products take, right? To like come to market is like 3 to 6 months or whatever. So yeah, you're.
It's also like Disney. I think the thing that is hard when you're an adult is you can see through some of the reasons why things are serviced in a story, and we also know how the Disney apparatus works, right? Why do they put Ventress in that episode? It's a test balloon, right? They want to see how much interest is there still in Ventress. If there's a lot, they're going to do more with her. If there isn't, then that's fine. They put her in the one episode. They can sell some toys and they can cut their losses. It's like any of these characters or any of these things. Why do you put Cad Bane back in there? Let's see how much interest is in for good old Cad while he steals a baby, right?
Boba Fett ruined a lot of things, including Cad Bane.
Oh man, that was
was
tough.
That was not the best.
Yeah, that was like a more jarring aspect of this last season. And Mavi, you mentioned the first 2 seasons. To be honest, I forget a lot of the first 2 seasons.
Sure,
and that ties in also with the Junis point, where from the very beginning the show was never very heavy on character development. So, it didn't stand out as much to me because it was always lacking in that department. Like Wreck-It was always Wreck-It Ralph. I'm gonna wreck it. And Crosshair to me was always the most interesting. Anytime Crosshair was on screen, I was like, this episode is easily the highlight of the season for both 1 and 2. He had the most dynamic character progression. Junior, you're absolutely right. Hunter was definitely sidetracked this last season, but that was directly to put Crosshair back into the Bad Batch. And so we got less Hunter development in favor of Crosshair development. I would be curious. I would take a rewatch it feels like every season just has a slightly different highlight. The first season's Hunter, second season is Tech, and this third season was Crosshair. Wrecker, unfortunately they made him the big dumb brute, if you will, the tank, who in a lot of things doesn't need a lot of character development. He's open, he's honest, he doesn't have a lot of secrets. He is what he is what you get. So they probably felt like this is just a guy for some comic relief and to deal with the muscly situations, right? So in regards to all of the cameos, that was jarring. It was very clearly obvious that just putting these characters in as fun call-outs. What did they really serve? Not much, right? All of those episodes were kind of, even though I really enjoyed them, were the filler of this season, right? We didn't the episode with oh my goodness, I'm blanking on, with Cad Bane, with those other cameos. You could actually just take those episodes out. Those were the side episodes, if you will.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
But to the Ventress point, though, and I think it's also interesting
there
that Ventress is back out in the galaxy doing whatever, and then also Tales of the Jedi. That is a thing that, or excuse me, Tales of the Empire is a thing that came out. Check our previous podcast if you want to listen to our thoughts on that. But Morgan, they also made an entire arc about her character, and obviously at the end events of Ahsoka, she is like no longer with us supposedly. But the fact that we now kind of know that Ventress and Morgan are alive and running around at the same time period, and both think that the Night Sisters are kind of kaput. Like, are we going to see like more, Night Sister stuff? Like, is there other stuff that Morgan does in between what we see? Do they even cross paths? Like, I think that part is kind of interesting, and maybe that is by design. Maybe there is this bigger neutral force group thing that we're going to potentially see.
I mean, it's all a soap opera, right? Like you have all of these story elements that are out there, and you can kind of dictate however you want to do it and however people respond. It almost like is, there's so many different series and comic books and toys that you can just kind of put it all out there, see what people kind of align with, and then go with the most popular storyline. And people were like, oh my god, I'm a big Morgan stan after Tales of the Empire, and like, oh man, Ventress is back. Yeah, there is going to be a Night Sisters thing. If people don't care, then there won't be.
Like, it's the gift and curse of social media to get real-time feedback on
exactly,
characters are doing well and which aren't.
That's very
you have less of the creative. You have less of the creative. Like, I have to stake my claim of whatever is best for the story. It's like whatever is best for the pocketbook, whatever is best for spitting profits. So, like, there's enough stuff there to fuel stuff. Like, if people really want to see Omega meet Boba Fett, it's gonna happen. It just depends on what the fans
show.
That's one of the things I was probably It was weird. It just felt teased like a bunch, and then just never happened. It just,
they're clearly
it felt like it was supposed to happen.
Yeah, it really does. And the fact that we have Omega going off on this galaxy-wide adventure now means, to be honest, actually, now that I think about it, having Omega meet Boba when he's at the height of his bounty hunting days during the original trilogy, probably more dramatic. If she's a hero for the rebellion and he's the best bounty hunter, instead of like after the original trilogy where he's redeeming himself.
To Ravi's point,
or before that where he's a kid, right?
To Ravi's point, if Omega gets captured again, how epic would it be if Boba Fett is the one that brings Omega?
Oh man,
to the Empire.
Oh wait, didn't Ventress and Boba have a thing? Like
yes,
like she trained him, or he's on her crew?
He like, there was a brief couple of episodes in the Clone Wars where he needed her help for something.
Yeah, okay. So Ventress is trying to insert herself with all this second generation of clones.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
And then Fennec, remember, obviously works with Boba and knows Omega very well too. So there's a lot. There's a ton of.
I forgot about Fennec. Yeah,
Fennec, Cad Bane. They're
another,
all
another throwaway episode, by the way. Like all the Cad Bane episode,
Fennec,
the Fennec episode, the Ventress episode, you could take those out and the story doesn't change
There's
at all.
multiple Fennec. Fennec appears in every season of the show. Like,
yeah.
She's
I
in a
just mean for
lot.
this last season, like those 3
yeah.
cameos, those episodes were the miscellaneous ones. If that makes sense.
Going into like the other big thing here, which is everyone's, favorite Star Wars thing. Are they actually dead? So like to start, obviously, going into this finale, I think a lot of people, myself included, I thought that I thought the Bad Batch were done. I didn't think Omega would die in this. There was
like
no
a Rogue
kind
One
of
type of situation.
Yeah, I definitely thought like we would basically see all of our main character, or like Crosshair, Hunter, and Wrecker eventually slowly die throughout the series. So the fact that or the finale. So the fact that they didn't was a big kind of surprise. And then the other big surprise was Tech's death. I think we had all talked about how we thought Tech was coming back. Like, were you guys surprised by the fact that there was no extra death except for the bad guys? Did it work? Juno, let's start with you.
No, I'm not surprised, but I'm glad that they kept it as is, because I think it would have cheapened Tech's sacrifice at the end of season 2 if you brought him back. I think they very clearly were trying to make you believe the super clone task force was one of Tech, with a lot of the different shots and whatnot. Even like when Hemlock goes into the thing and the helmet slowly comes down and they don't show the face, I'm like, are they doing this because it's Tech? Like, it's very strange. So I'm glad they didn't do that. I'm glad that they didn't make him like he's alive the whole time. It'd be like a weird thing to do in the finale. And then on top of that, I'm glad they didn't kill anyone else, because that would also lessen the impact of Tech's death. Right? If you just start killing the whole Bad Batch, it makes it like, well, they were all destined to die, and so you kind of forget about it. It lets it really like sit and lay, and it makes you feel his loss even more throughout the season, throughout the finale. Even like there's a tinge of sadness for me in that last shot. You see Echo leave, but like it's still just there's still a guy missing, right? Like that's what makes it really kind of lay. So I'm glad they did it. I'm glad they didn't feed into the trope that he's alive or like kill off the rest a la Rogue One. It made it really impactful. It made it really sit, and it made the loss feel like it meant something. And even though they didn't talk about it ad nauseum for the entire season, you felt it in all the missions. And even when Crosshair in the finale is like, Clone Force 99 died with Tech, and it's like, yeah, it kind of did, like that cohesiveness.
Different squad
like,
now.
They kind of suck. They kind of suck this season. Like, you know what I mean?
They kept losing.
They kept losing. They were really a mess. They were a big mess for most of the season, and they kind of. I thought the way they did that with the storytelling was really, really well done. And there was one bit of loss. Crosshair did lose his hand.
Oh man, that was brutal.
That part's
Star
like,
Wars
holy
trope.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm like, I mean, I guess it was shaking the whole time anyway. So did
Yeah.
it really? Did it really matter?
So in theory, they helped him out.
Yeah, exactly. He has to train with the other hand, and he redeems himself with that shot, so it's fine.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one would hope though, like if they end up on the planet's called
Pabu.
Pabu. What a great name, Pabu.
Just
so
like
they end up
Pabu
on Pabu. One would hope
from
that like,
Legend of Korra.
Crosshair doesn't have to like go and shoot anyone anymore, and that things are peaceful. But what's interesting though is like the Empire knows that planet is there. They showed up earlier in the season, so we'll see. I mean, it's probably very similar to like how Rebels ends, where Sabine's talking about how they'll prepare the planet, and if the Empire comes, they'll take them on. Then the Empire never did. I mean, I would assume that's what happened with Pabu. If there's no reason to be there besides just taking over this island, why be there? So,
but they're bigger fish to fry, like Alderaan.
Yeah, I guess my only question is, how much did like Palpatine know about all of Hemlock's plans? Right, like does he know that Omega was kind of the key? Because it does feel weird that if he did know that, he wouldn't be like hunting her down personally.
I would imagine. Remember, the dude is running an entire empire. Right. I don't think he would be. I mean, I'm sure if he wants to look up the information, he could, but he's running a whole thing. Like, he doesn't I don't know how one would have the time or the patience to learn like the nitty gritty.
I think Hemlock would have kept it secret from Palpatine for job security. I think that's like an element. They referenced it. There was a few times referenced as well. The Vault is like off the record. Like when Echo's trying to hack in, he can't find any. So I would imagine, and also even to get to Tantus, like there's no coordinates. It's only uploaded to the ship on route, on route or whatever. So Hemlock, I would presume, was keeping an ace in the hole. Like he probably didn't tell Palpatine details so that he is indispensable. He truly is indispensable. As soon as you tell Palpatine Omega's the key, Hemlock is replaceable because you have what you actually need.
There's also not only that, but remember the end scene is Tarkin shows up and says, "Let's divert funding into Stardust." So in a way, even though Hemlock probably was talking somewhat directly to the Emperor, he still is like financially and whatever reporting some stuff into Tarkin. And it's also very obvious that, Tarkin shows up, planet's fully destroyed. If Tarkin is the one talking to Palpatine of where finances and money and things should go, he probably doesn't want any more of this nonsense because Tarkin is a strategy guy, right? Like he is like, we are going to put money and resources into things that are going to go kaboom boom and push us forward or whatever. So he probably looked at that project as a huge waste of time, right? So he may have known, but was not telling Palpatine in the end.
Yeah, I
what do you guys think?
Yeah, I was going to say real quick, just to finish that thought off. The show did a really good job of showing the infighting and the secretive nature of the Empire and how much the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. Mm-hmm. The compartmentalization of that huge organization. That the show did a very good job of showing that, from Rampart to Tarkin to Hemlock, all of those factions, all the I'm gonna outdo you, bitch.
Well, the Empire, Thrawn says it, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say Thrawn says it. Thrawn says it perfectly in Tales of the Empire when he meets with Morgan. He's like, "This Empire is going to fail. Like it is just too big, and there are too many people with too many different ideas pulling in different directions." And I think that's nice. It's nice to see. I think one of the things that has been done best between Rebels, between Bad Batch, between all these different shows, all these different things that take place between episodes 3 and 4, even a little, I know we don't like the show, but even Obi-Wan shows just kind of the chaos within the Empire, the reasons it fails so many years later. Like it wasn't just the Rebels overcame this. Like there were a lot of cracks and a lot of things that kind of led to it being kind of easily dismantled. And hopefully they do some of that with with the Mandoverse in terms of like with 6 and 7 and the First Order and how they kind of came undone before they were even like done in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Isn't there a line in Andor where someone says like the Empire's become fat and happy?
Yes.
Yeah. Andor is another one that does a great job.
Yeah. Real quick, just to answer Ravi's the original question of the death thing. Are you surprised by the deaths? Arjuna said everything I wanted to say, so I'll go in a different direction. This last episode, I feel bad. It's going to be dark side. It's going to be a little dark to talk about, but I felt very happy when Rampart and Hemlock died. Like, by the end, I hated those two characters so much that their deaths was very satisfying. Like, when Crosshair and Hunter are just shooting the fuck out of Hemlock, like, it's like, yeah, I get him, shoot him more. I was like, oh, man, the show did a great job of villains. I thought I was like, villains that I really didn't like. Rampart was interesting because he was being set up to be like almost like redeemable, like redeem, like and then all of a sudden he's like, but then I like that they didn't, because that shows the difference between him and Crosshair. That line where he's like, "You're just like me. You only care about yourself," and Crosshair's like, "I've changed." He's like, "I doubt it," and then it just shows that he is about himself. He wants job security. He wants to get back in the Empire, trying to steal the research or whatever. So his death was very satisfying. I was like, you bastard. You had a way out. He had multiple opportunities to redeem himself, to get out, to remove himself, to live a life of peace, and he just didn't take any of them. Deserves his death.
I will say it was, they kind of wrote themselves into a corner with just where they were in the timeline and having to kind of destroy everything and even with like Nala Se's existence, they had to kill her, right? Because if she was alive at any point, the Empire or somebody would want her knowledge, and they had to get rid of the information. So they're just like, let's put these characters
A literal
into
bomb.
this area and blow it up. And it was kind of, I was like, well, there really wasn't much else to do. You kind of wrote yourself into a corner there. So I was like, all right.
So going back to like your original thought at the top of the pod, where you said like there were some creative story decisions that you had questions on.
I'm so
Is that
curious.
one of them?
Yeah.
And what other ones do you have?
That was certainly one. I think the other one I kind of alluded to with Wrecker, but it also goes with Crosshair. I just thought it was a weird. After they leave Tantus, like those guys get nothing, right? They are such core characters to the Bad Batch. Even like Echo gets a little bit of a wrap up with Emery, and you see him go off, but like Crosshair and Wrecker get nothing. The last two scenes are just conversations between Echo and Hunter. That's it. It goes Echo Hunter, fade into time jump to Echo and Hunter. Like they're not even in the cave when she takes off. And they're like distant. I mean, they come and they sit with them, but there's no lines, there's no dialogue. And I don't know, it just felt like it just felt like a weird way to say goodbye to these characters, like especially Crosshair. Like Crosshair, I think.
Right, but you have to remember, Star Wars from the first film does this thing where they take certain characters and they say, fuck you. Remember episode 4 at the very end? What did they do to fucking Chewbacca?
Yeah.
He gets no medal.
I will say this.
Yeah.
I didn't mind the Crosshair thing so much because his story wrapped up at the very moment where his arm is resting on Hunter's, and he's like, I can't do it. It's Omega. That shows right there that he's formed the bond with Omega.
Sure.
And then Hunter, when we wrap up Hunter's right there, he's like, take the shot. Omega can do this. And then he does. And I was like, right there, to me, you didn't need more. And I think maybe a line or two at the end might have cheapened that moment. I absolutely can see what you're saying. I think that's just like the nature of 15 episode, 25 to 30 minutes. And you have kind of a big, not big, but you've got a cast, right? And some are going to get the shaft. So they definitely had to make cuts. The Crosshair thing I was okay with because, let's be honest, he's a man of few words anyway. He doesn't need a big monologue or a big send off. Also, I guess I was okay with it just being Hunter and Omega at the end because that is the central relationship to the whole. The Bad Batch goes where Hunter goes, and the Hunter-Omega relationship is probably the central relationship to the whole show. And so ending it there probably makes the most. It still works. It's not perfect, but it works, I think.
It was just weird to me to do it back to back. Like the second to last conversation is Hunter and Echo, and then go back to Hunter and Echo. I think the final one being Hunter and Echo is fine. But I think that final one should have been Echo with the whole Bad Batch, even with like or Omega with the whole Bad Batch, like including Echo, to say goodbye, and to have like one scene with all of them together. It was just it was strange to me. It didn't feel like a finale. It felt like a we'll see you next time.
Exactly, and the line that Hunter literally says, "If you need us, we'll be there." It wasn't a goodbye; it's "see you later."
Yeah.
Which
but
means
it is a goodbye.
Which soldiers at the Battle of Endor were the Bad Batch? We already see Rex. Where were the Bad Batch in Endor?
Well, I mean, again, I would hope that they don't. I mean, I would hope that they don't jump back into war. Like that's kind of and that's the other thing. Like with this show and it wrapping up is like I want to be done with clones, not because I'm tired of their story or anything, but because like they deserve to be like they're done. They've done their part. Like they are genetically altered to age very, very quickly. So they don't have full 50, long 60 lives. Plus years of life or whatever. So it's like by us seeing that the batch is staying and Omega's going to continue her journey and whatnot, I think that is a nice, good separation. But I also think, I like the idea that it's not goodbye. It is just like, we're here if you need us. And I think they did it. I think it would have been too cheesy if it was like bye and everyone's waving. Like,
Yeah, no, it doesn't need to be
Sorry.
cheesy. It just, again, even like a line of dialogue,
Sure.
it was just very strange that like the last line of dialogue from Wrecker was literally
I'd
like
be curious
15
to
minutes
like hear
before.
what the general people, like audience people, think of that. So if you're listening and you have the ability to comment, comment below. Do you think that ending was strange, or did you like the ending?
I will say I felt represented as a bald man. That scene where the four of them are sitting by the tree and you've got Wrecker and Crosshair. I'm like, oh yeah, bald representation. We need more of this.
Yeah, and with Hunter with his long, luscious hair, I felt represented too. So
yeah, he had a beard in that last one.
And he had a beard too, and I have a beard.
You could pull it off. You could do
and
it.
I'm gonna get face tattoos as well. So
you should absolutely.
Real
Yeah,
ones. Totally. Yeah, no, I'm not
just
gonna
like
do
Rambo.
that. Yeah, I'm Rambo. Before we get into future bold predictions, let's look at our bold predictions that we made when we did season 2 finale of Bad Batch last year at some point. Krishna, we'll start with you. And remember, this is a point-based system. The loser with the least amount of points gets slapped in the face.
I live in Denver.
I'll book the ticket.
You can't reach
so Krishna said, switcheroo, Tech is alive, but Crosshair will die by end of season 3 after a full redemption arc. We'll make the ultimate sacrifice. Krishna, based on the description that you gave us, you only got one piece right, which is Crosshair had a redemption arc. We did see that. I guess also I could give you another point for the ultimate sacrifice. He lost his shooting hand. That is a big sacrifice.
For Crosshair, yeah.
Yeah.
After,
so you get 2 points
yeah.
for this. Tech still alive, or Tech is still dead, and Crosshair did not die. So you lose 2 points. So you end up with 0 points.
What the fuck?
It's a great
Point
math.
at like a point and a half, 1.5 maybe.
Not to
Yep,
defend
0.
Krishna, but technically anyone can come back in Star Wars. Palpatine, it took him like 30 years, but he did it.
And he
Somehow
came back
come
with
back.
a line.
And in
Palpatine
theory-
returned.
Crosshair, every character will die eventually, so
It's also like Hemlock, right? Hemlock fell. And what's like the one main thing in
Yeah.
Star Wars? If you fall, you come back.
That's true.
So
yeah, that
maybe
was
maybe
that
that's
did myth.
how
That was a little myth.
maybe
Little
that's how
myth.
Project Necromancer comes to be, is because he's still alive. But yeah, let's hope not. I had said Tech is not dead. Tech is the reason the Batch is able to get to Hemlock. Didn't die, but put a tracker on the ship. So
I think I have
0
more
points
than
there as
you.
well.
Yeah.
I think -5.
Arjuna said,
Oh, you had a second part. You had a second part, Ravi.
Oh yeah. And then my second part was Grogu is in season 3. Pershing will be there and is related to Hemlock. So the Pershing thing could still be a thing.
I will say Grogu not being in Bad Batch seemed like a given for the show, and that it didn't happen is surprising for sure.
It's some restraint, to be honest. In a way, I'm glad that they didn't, because Grogu would immediately become the talking point of see what he did to Mandalorian is only a thing because of Grogu, right?
Right.
You put Grogu, the cutest, though I will say that little white baby guy.
Baron?
Is
Baron?
it Baron with the high M count?
Yeah.
Gives Grogu a run for his money. I thought that dude was hilarious.
When they did the kids, it reminded me of the Clone Wars arc where they had the kids who like made their lightsabers, and I think Filoni came out a long time. Yeah, and a long time afterward and said that the idea had been to make a spin-off about those kids. And so when I saw the kids,
we saw the Wookiee.
The Wookiee,
he was in an earlier episode.
Yeah.
So.
It's in season 2, I think, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And but when I saw the kids with Omega, I'm like, is this the follow-up? Like, is it going to be Omega with kids? These force sensitive kids.
Omega's tots.
Yeah.
Omega's tots.
Like Michael's tots.
Speaking of cameos, like, remember Kanan as a kid? We see him in like the first few episodes of season
in the very
1.
first episode of the show.
Yeah, we never see him again or mention of him again.
Again, restraint.
I mean, it's a good thing, right? Like, because we want to keep the universe, the galaxy large. We don't want to be like, oh, hey, I remember you, just running into them. So I think that works.
Hey.
But yes, I get 0 points. Arjuna had said, Snoke bodies are clone trooper bodies with Grogu DNA juice added in for Force stuff. What the fuck?
That could technically still be. That is still
It's a
on
hell
the
of a
table.
bold prediction. Hell of
I
a
mean,
bold prediction.
to the point of like we never saw the faces of those super troopers doing their stuff, right? The ones that like are in the cooler armor, and the one that like we don't see their
The
faces.
anti-Bad Batch. The good
Yeah,
batch.
so it's like I mean it's implied that they are the anti-Bad Batch, but at the same time we never see their actual faces. So you still get 0 points.
That's interesting.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Basically, everyone fails. You all suck at making. We all suck at making bold predictions.
They're bold. Like they shouldn't hit very often.
No, exactly.
Right.
But that being said, we should make some bold predictions for the future of the Bad
Batch.
and Omega. Like, what do we think is gonna? I think what would be interesting is like let's frame it as what is the next piece of media or content that we see them in? Do they get their own series? Are they now becoming side characters like like Rex? Obviously, is a side character. Like, are they side characters or getting a main story? What do we think?
I'll go
Chris, you
first.
start.
Yeah. It's not going to be the next thing they appear in chronologically, but I think the next thing Omega would appear in is the Mandalorian and Grogu movie.
Mm.
I can't foresee that movie happening without like a Boba Fett in there in some way, shape, or form. And I think it would be kind of crazy. Dave Filoni is directing that movie. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Correct. Yeah.
So that to me feels like Dave Filoni's big Avengers Endgame. So I would be shocked if he doesn't try to. I'll be surprised if he doesn't try to put in
Everybody.
as many cameos. Maybe that's why he's shown so much restraint in the Bad Batch, because he's like, I'm gonna go fucking nuts in my movie.
Every character will have had an arc in one of my animated shows.
Yeah, and like the Bad Batch are gonna. Well, that hopefully they're dead by then. But
I'm sure we'll
They
get
might not
roasted
be.
for this. But remember
who knows?
the George Lucas voiced character in some Clone Wars arc. He was like a blue alien. And the actor is dead. But that character will show up in the movie in some way.
Click Clack could be in there.
Will
You
show
know,
up.
I mean,
Saw Gerrera is gonna be fucking there.
wait,
What? He's definitely dead at that point.
Oh, he is super dead.
well, I don't. Did we see him die?
Oh,
Yes, he gets vaporized by the Death Star at like 2%
No.
power.
Did we see him die, or did we just
him
see an
standing there, the
explosion?
fucking thing comes and blows him away.
No. You didn't see him fall to the ground. Go.
Just like Cassian Andor, he's still alive.
Yeah. Cassian's gonna show up in Vandor. He's alive.
All I'm saying is, Dave Filoni is gonna go nuts on the movie. But yeah, I really do think. I think the next thing we see her in is an older Omega in that, and I think that'll be for all of us. It'll be fan service. It'll be for all of us who sat through Clone Wars, Rebels, and Bad Batch. Because let's be honest, Bad Batch is. It feels like the epilogue to Clone Wars, right?
Sure.
It wraps up. It's post Order 66. It shows us the defective side of the clones, but then it also shows us this transition period, right? So Bad Batch to me, like you said, Ravi, it wraps up the clones. That being said, going forward, we have normal aging clones, 2 of them, significant ones, Boba and Omega, who are, little do they know, probably very important to the fabric of the Star Wars universe. Kind of like Ahsoka is, we didn't know this during the original trilogy, but George Lucas could only focus on certain characters. So you have to let those characters, just do their own thing in the background.
Speaking of Lucas,
Obviously.
I don't know if this is true, and I saw it on the internet, but I had read somewhere that with the end of Bad Batch, that is the last thing that Lucas had direct influence in or on. So, as you all know, Filoni worked closely with Lucas when developing the Clone Wars, but the Bad Batch was always a part of the Clone Wars. And now that this is wrapped, it's supposed to basically the thought is that is the last piece of content that he would have.
Would George have had any influence on Ahsoka though?
No, Ahsoka, from what I understand, is solely the character is a Filoni original, I believe.
I don't think that's true. I think I don't think that's true at all. I believe George Lucas Filoni has talked about this, where he's like, yeah, George Lucas walked in and it's like, yeah, Anakin always had a Padawan. Her name was Ahsoka. And we're all like, what?
Fuck? You can blame all this shit on George. George was like, I'm walking away. I'm gonna hit the detonate button.
Yeah. he had, I think George had the broad strokes of like, yeah, we're gonna have this character who is a Padawan of Anakin. Now, I think Filoni like took the character and really developed the character. But I think Ahsoka was the George Lucas original.
We also have to remember though, like the way I imagine, and again, please don't come for us, but the way I imagine George Lucas, like pitched things, especially like post, episodes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, he goes into a room and says, yeah, Anakin always had a Padawan named Ahsoka, and then that's it. That's entirely, doesn't know what it looks like, doesn't know its race, nothing else. And to a degree, I also feel like with the Bad Batch, it was like in discussions around the clones, he probably dropped a single line that was like, yep, there's a defective supergroup. That was it.
That's what you do as an executive producer.
The level of like Lucas influence.
Yeah, and you get EP rights on it, but it was just a throwaway line.
Just a throwaway line.
I was drunk when I said that. Yeah. I didn't expect you guys to make a whole show about it.
That's how Rogue One came to be, right? People were like, how did the... Yeah, Rogue One was
right.
Just
yeah, Rogue One was an entire film based
like...
on a single line in a title crawl sequence.
Oh yeah, but I mean, at this point, they're mining. They're mining this stuff hard, right? I mean, it's an IP, it's a franchise, it's whatever. So, yeah.
I don't know, Junior, your bold prediction for Omega, the clones, or excuse me, the Bad Batch.
I'm gonna go with something I said earlier, where I think the next show, I think the next animated show is going to be some type of rebellion fighter pilot, like Rogue Squadron, Phoenix Squadron, some type of squadron type of show that will have like Hera and Omega and some other characters from kind of the Filoni animated universe, right? I think there's going to be like this kind of show with this squadron, and I don't think Omega is going to be like the central character, but I think she'll be a main character. It'll be like an ensemble show. That's kind of mixed. Yeah.
I just had a thought. The guy who wrote the Rogue Squadron novels before Disney bought Star Wars, Michael Stackpole, he wrote a second series of books on a covert rebellion squadron called Wraith Squadron. And Wraith Squadron was always more interesting because those were guys who were kind of like the Bad Batch in a way. They did covert operations. They were kind of off the books. And their operation was kind of nuts. So I wonder if they'll sort of repurpose Phoenix Squadron and like characters like Hera and Omega, who has a lot of skills that would translate into what Wraith Squadron did. The only thing is, I think Wraith Squadron takes place potentially after episode 6, because they're dealing with a lot of like the warlords of the Empire, Singe.
No, so according to the Wikipedia page on Wraith Squadron, and again, this is non-canonical.
It's not, it's expanded.
So it says it's 7 years after the Battle of Yavin.
Oh, okay, so it's right in
there.
That's
like 5 and 6 before.
No, that would be between, because I think the Battle of or Empire Strikes Back, it's only a year or two after episode 4, and then
isn't between 5 and 6, it's like 5 years.
Yeah, between 5 and 6, it's like
3
to 5.
Maybe it is after.
I don't think it's 5 years. I thought it was like 2 years.
No, I think it's like 3 to 5, but I don't know for sure. I thought it was a little bit more of a time jump between 5 and 6. Yeah. To look up Battle of Hoth and then Battle of Endor. That'll, in the fake timeline, I thought it might have been 7, but I could be very wrong.
So
the time between episode 5 and 6 is 1 to 3 years.
Aha, so we'll go with 3, so I'm right.
I love how like vague it is, because they've done this many times in Star Wars where it's like, well, time displacement, travel and shit, and like to their point, like light speed, even if you're going at light speed, relativity and time and distance is a whole mathematical thing. So like if you're moving at the speed of light, even though you're going that fast, the people that you leave from are still
The
aging.
hyperspace lanes take
I
care
don't
of
know.
that problem.
I
don't have
sure.
that problem in
Yeah.
Star Wars.
Okay. Well, I don't know how it works.
Yeah,
I'm not a
doesn't
physicist.
apply to Star Wars either.
But yeah, I think a show with like Omega, with Hera, and some other characters would be cool because we know Hera becomes a general of the New Republic, and that, but we don't know like her between Rebels and getting to that like General Syndulla type of ranking. So it'd be cool maybe to see some of that in this type of show too.
Nice.
And speaking of like testing character popularity, she was very popular in Ahsoka for reasons that will go unmentioned here.
Her butt.
Wait, I don't get it. Real quick though. What if there's a darker timeline being created here? Because we have this mysterious group called the Knights of Ren, and now we have several Force-sensitive characters. Well, not Force-sensitive, but Force-potential characters, like Omega. And we've always made the joke of, like, a little Grogu in the Knight of Ren armor. I'm just saying, a Knights of Ren. Like, Omega is, like, one of Luke's older students who turns to the dark side.
The way I look at the Knights of Ren is the same way that you look at, like, the Inquisitors. They're like
They're just a bunch of
they're just a bunch of wannabes. Like
or even these like super clone troopers, right? They're
just nobodies.
They look cool, but they are truly nobodies. They're just
toys.
They're just throwaway characters.
They're collectibles, Christian, not toys.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, show some respect.
I think that most they'll ever do is like a book about the identities of the Knights of Ren, but beyond that,
nope. It'll be a throwaway line in a comic.
That will then be turned into a trilogy of movies.
Yeah, Disney's trying to create so much content around Star Wars. There's definitely going to be at least an animated show directed by Dave Filoni about it won't be called Knights of Ren. We don't even know it's about Knights of Ren. It'll be called like
the Knights of Ben.
It'll be like Force Redux, and it'll be about Luke training these younglings, right? Trying to bring back the light side of the Force. And then we're like, oh my god, this is the beginning of the Knights of Ren, and dark, because Dave Filoni can do dark now.
No, it's dark because they hired the DP from Game of Thrones in that one episode. That was so dark.
I thought you were going to say they hired the DP from the Netflix show Dark.
I mean,
that's a good show.
Yeah, that's a great show though. Don't put disrespect on that show. I'm gonna go because both your bold predictions were tame. I'm gonna go with my bold prediction, and that is going to be, and I'm making this up as I go because I didn't give it thought. Even though you guys went ahead of me, I'm gonna go with Omega. We see her next. I can't believe I'm saying this. We're gonna see her next in a series or something that is around the time period of episode 5 or 6. And that series is going to be the start of Disney redoing the original trilogy, because I still believe that's going to end up happening. So what I mean by that is, like, so we see her in like this episode 5 or 6 in between series, and it's going to have a recasted Luke, Leia, and Han.
Jesus.
Yes. There we go. That's great. That's a stupid bold prediction.
It is. It's so bold, it's impossible.
Yeah,
never
2 years later.
Never say never.
Yeah.
I could see them doing. Do you ever read Ender's Game?
No, I watched the movie. I don't read.
Yeah. So the author, he wrote Orson Scott Card, I think his name is. He wrote Ender's Game, and then he wrote a bunch of books about characters that happened during Ender's Game. So it's like the same events from different perspectives, essentially. I could see Disney doing that, like a trilogy around with like Ahsoka and Hera and Omega and Grogu, or whoever's around.
They did
right?
that. They did that for
the original trilogy from that perspective.
Yeah,
they did that for Twilight. So Hera has a book. It's like the first Twilight book redone from the perspective of Edward,
Miles,
the main vampire, called Midnight Sun, I believe.
Is it like just about this guy having emo life?
I would imagine. I don't think she's read the book yet, but
I mean, it's a great way to kind of go about redoing the original trilogy without redoing the original trilogy.
Totally.
We're gonna do is like to combine like Arjuna's bold prediction of like a movie with Hera and like all these other side characters that we've gone through the series and things, and to kind of give them a lead through, from prequel time to sequel time and the in betweens there. What are they doing in the original? This is an easy way to do that.
You know what else they could do? Do you guys remember the book The Hatchet?
Yes, great book.
They made a sequel which was just like, what if he didn't escape when like the radio didn't work or whatever? They should do that for Star Wars. They're like,
it's a giant what if.
Yeah, it's like, what if they didn't destroy the Death Star in A New Hope?
Wow. I mean, we can easily say what would have happened. Like, so if the Death Star doesn't get destroyed, Tarkin's still around. Vader is on the Death Star. Luke dies. There's no redemption arc for Vader. They just keep falling into darkness. They would be nuking planets left, right, and center until there was true galactic peace, right? Because that was the whole point of the Death Star, is like this weapon that would destroy a whole planet that they feel that there's a problem, and like that is the biggest stop it, right?
The Force corrects itself, right? Not to be like that nerd, but the Force corrects itself. The Force would have chosen Ahsoka to be the one to defeat Vader. You know what I'm saying? Like that's how like.
So Krishna follows blind leaders.
Yeah,
but isn't that though like the Force? I mean, this in itself could be a whole other podcast, but like, isn't like, I know like it's the Star Wars and it's a story and like we need the Force and the Jedi and the Sith and good and bad in order to like have a cohesive thing and a focal point to like focus on. But like, if you remove Vader, like let's just remove him, and Ahsoka does kill Vader, but there's still this Death Star. There's still this military presence doing its shit. It's still gonna be doing like Vader being alive or dead. Like he's just an enforcer. He is not the thing. That'd
be another rebellion. That'd be another Force to rise up.
Oh, you could also argue. Here's an interesting argument too. When you look at like the toys and the powers of the Empire as a whole, right? Vader used to be like before the Death Star, the Empire's trump card, right? Oh, if Vader's around, like this is the ultimate weapon. This is the thing that instills fear in people. Part of the reason Tarkin obviously didn't love Vader, and wanted to probably have the Death Star replace him in that way because it's a thing he could physically control while Vader wasn't his thing. So I think it's just like whatever replaces what. Like if the Death Star doesn't get destroyed in Episode 4, Vader probably is like less useful and actually might fall to the light side earlier because like he's being pushed out of the Empire in a lot lot.
Can you imagine flip flop?
Yeah,
he just turns to the light side like on his own. He's like, you know what? This is stupid.
It's war, right? It's about like the things that are useful, and like muskets used to be the biggest thing in wars, and then automatic guns came, and then missiles and nukes, and like all those things outdated the other things. So it's like the Death Star outdated Darth Vader in a lot of ways.
Wait, do we real quick? Speaking about real world, as we progress, guns, muskets, etc., and now it's nukes. Social media is the thing that trumps nukes, right?
I mean, that's won an election for someone. So, yes.
All right, let's wrap it up here. Christian, you can kick us off with the big question.
Ooh. Arjuna. What are we doing, the finale or the whole show or the season?
Whole show.
Arjuna, was Star Wars Bad Batch good?
Pause for dramatic effect. It was good, yes. I enjoyed the show. I don't think it was the best. I think there were plenty of things that could have been better. I wouldn't say this was the best of the Filoni offerings. I probably put it probably Rebels. I think from beginning to end is the best of the Filoni animated shows, and I think that like last season is just top tier. And then Clone Wars. Clone Wars is so uneven. Like the best seasons of Clone Wars, some of the best seasons of Clone Wars and some of the best episodes of Clone Wars, it's unmatched, unparalleled. And then there has some of the worst stuff in there. And then of course last is Star Wars Resistance, because that was just like that show took me 3 years to finish, and it was only 2 seasons. So
damn.
But it was rewarding in the end. But Bad Batch, somewhere in the middle for sure. Ravi, was The Bad Batch. Sans Wrecker. Good.
It was good. It was a nice and surprisingly happy ending. And I think the thing that surprised me more is that I was okay with the happy ending, and I wasn't annoyed.
You're getting old. You have
I guess
sentimentality now
I'm
in you.
getting old as fuck.
5
Wait,
years
are
ago,
we
you were
saying
like,
that,
I
like-
hate this.
Are we saying that what as you get older you get nicer? Because in my experience, older people are mean.
It
True.
depends. Really depends on where you're at.
Krishna, was the Bad Batch series as a whole good?
It was good. And I think like a lot of Filoni shows, it got better as it went on. Like first season was like, okay, we're introducing this stuff. Second season had like the first half was just filler. It didn't get good until the second half. This third season I thought was the strongest season from start to end. I was like invested. Yeah, as a whole, extremely good show. I think Arjuna's ranking probably nails it. I think Rebels first,
Yeah,
Bad Batch,
Yeah.
and Clone Wars. Yeah, it's hard to rank those because if you take the best of Clone Wars is first. But if you include the bad, then it's second or third. Maybe it's hard to say.
I think it's probably
and then I never
second,
saw
and then
Resistance.
Bad Batch third, and then Resistance is.
That's fair.
I don't
Yeah.
even put Resistance on.
Yeah,
the
I
map,
haven't seen
to be
Resistance,
fair.
so I can't even rank that.
I
I'm not
challenge
guilty.
you both to watch
Nope.
it.
No, I'm
Nope,
good.
there's too much
I'd rather
content.
watch. I'd rather start watching Bridgerton than getting into fucking Star Wars Resistance.
Don't tempt Arjuna.
I mean, I'm not gonna watch fucking Bridgerton.
Resistance is a
Yeah.
good show. It's good.
I don't like ye
entertaining.
old English high class society nonsense.
But you like gossip.
Yeah, but not ye old high English class society nonsense. Anyway, that's going to do it for us here. And what's it good? As always, thank you for tuning in, listening, watching. As always, you can find us on YouTube at youtube.com/wasitgood, on our TikTok and our Instagram at wasitgoodpod. Our website wasitgood.info. Check it out. Some fun things there. Till next time, be good. Be good to the world and to your friends and family. New pods drop every Saturday.
So say we all.